And away we go. It's the DFS Early Bird presented by Awesemo.com. Dan Strafford, Josh Engelman along with you on this Friday morning, getting you ready for a 13-game main slate on the major DFS sites. One of those is Yahoo DFS. Don't forget, they have a ton of offerings, management free. We also have a free 1 p.m. every Friday Yahoo Strategy Show. You can check that out. Tons of things to do over there. And NFL around the corner. They are offering up a ton of contests. I'll go through a read later on. Want to talk to Josh. Josh, how the hell are you doing? First show together, man.
I know. I'm excited. Two things. One, I'm really excited to finally hear And Away We Go live instead of just on a podcast form. So that was fun. Two, went back and listened to a little bit of you and Laffy from, I don't know, let's just say a week ago.
Uh-huh.
I love that you set him up with the Laffy_J. So good. So good.
So he's a smart guy. I will admit that. But there are times where if I slow play a joke with him, it pays off. And so that was one of my favorite. And the disappointment in his face when he realized what was happening made it all worthwhile.
I was happy about it.
I mentioned 13 game slate, but I think what we should do here at the top, Josh, for the listeners is draft our favorite and least favorite subs over in Slack. I'm kidding.
Oh, God.
I'm kidding.
What's the limit for the amount of time a YouTube video can exist?
Yeah, exactly. We'll just keep going. And
I'll be on. We'll just go right into the strategy show at 9:30 in the morning.
There will be certain ones who are typing the entire time, so it's fine. But nonetheless, we do have 13 games. We're going to go pitching as we always do here on the Early Bird. And then we'll talk some top stacks. We'll talk a little bit about strategy, which I do want to get your take on here.
Sure.
Talked with Adam on Wednesday morning's pod, and it did elicit some feedback in Slack chat about stat and sample sizes. And I don't want to get into the minutiae of the discussion in Slack, but for you are MMEing, your projections based, you're looking at all of those things. Do you care in baseball about an offense that maybe over the past 6 weeks is better, much better against a handed pitcher, or a certain stat that might change? Or are you really locked in to the entirety of the season as where your projections are coming from?
I wouldn't even know if they were hot lately. It's not even on my radar. Not that I don't think that is not that there's no value to it.
Right.
Because I'd love to know, where were they playing? Who were they playing? What pitchers were they facing? Because I think that paints the context a little bit. But in terms of just like raw information, if somebody's been hot against righties or hot against lefties lately, I'm just going with individual performance over X amount of time, and whatever that spits out for today is going to be whatever the answer is for me. But yeah, I don't pay too much attention to the trend stuff. Yeah,
it's something Dave and I have talked about. Adam and I, across other fantasy shows I've hosted about hot streaks. They exist. We know they exist. Just being able to quantify when they begin, when they end, and how to make them work is more gut than brain. It's more trying to make estimations on how well this guy is going. You look at someone like Tom Murphy there in Seattle with 4 home runs in 4 games. No one's projecting that.
No, not at all. Only Chris Randone.
Well, that is very true. And that's kind of what spurred this, because in his Roses and Thorns article, he talked about the Mariners over the past 2.5 months being much better against lefties than they had been over the total season. And I think it's, at least to your point, worth context, worth understanding what might have changed. Is it active roster versus the total roster? Is it trades that happened? Did their GM decide to trade off their entire roster again, and they have all new guys? So plenty of stuff that can be done. We are going to dive in on pitching. Any slate that has Lance Lynn high priced is one I want to talk about, because I just don't get how he has changed his career so much.
It's incredible.
He's been one of the most consistent pitchers in baseball all year. And he's one of the guys who I kept waiting for the wheels to fall off. Not wheels to fall off, just for him to become J.A. Happ. For him to go back to being a middle of the pack with some outstanding performances, some poor performances, but a median pitcher. And he hasn't done it. He's been really consistent, even in Texas, has been really solid. We get DeGrom at the top. We're using DraftKings prices. I will head on over to Yahoo and FanDuel to just check in on those as we run through. You got DeGrom at the top, Lynn, Ryu, and Berrios are all 10K or above. It's a nice cutoff point for us. You have DeGrom against Atlanta, Lance Lynn against a great matchup with the Chicago White Sox. They do have some strikeouts there. Ryu against the Yankees in Dodger Stadium. And Berrios gets Detroit at home, probably the best matchup outside the Marlins going right now from a strikeout perspective. What do you got here? Top end, I feel like there's some movement we can have. There's enough price differential from 11.3 down to 10K for Berrios. Does anyone stand out to you as must play is not the right word, but somebody you might have more exposure to than you'd expect at that sort of price point?
I would guess that Berrios and Lynn are the two guys that end up standing out, which is a really weird thing to say on a day where Jake DeGrom is still available. But DeGrom's got Atlanta, and Lynn and Berrios have two of the best matchups that they can possibly get. Berrios in particular, at least it's in Minnesota. Although, Lance Lynn, I guess, is getting a park upgrade going to Chicago in comparison to Texas. So even then, it's still good. I would guess, let's see, let's look at the line. Berrios minus 205 right now. Lance Lynn minus 142. I would guess
DeGrom's minus 180 with a 7.5 over under.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
I would guess that Berrios is my top pitcher. Lynn would be second. DeGrom would be third.
Yep. Now, I think that's projection wise what would I think end up happening here, just simply based on matchup and park factor, whatever word you want to use there, park influences on the projection model that you might be using. But I really am intrigued. I don't play much on FanDuel. I think everyone who listens knows that. But Berrios is just 8,800 over there. So off the top line, you have DeGrom at 11.2. Berrios is your seventh most expensive pitcher on FanDuel. So ownership projection wise, even on a 13-game slate, I know it's a single pitcher site. Like I get all of those factors, but that just seems like, I hate the term, but an absolute crush spot for Berrios at that price point.
Yeah, I would be very surprised if he is not the most popular pitcher on FanDuel tomorrow.
Crazy to see that. Lynn, to point out, is 9,700. DeGrom, 11.2, and Ryu is 9,400. Interestingly, at the top end, you're getting two pitchers who check in at the cheaper mid-tier points that we'll talk about now, and Jack Flaherty and Zach Greinke. Now, you get Boyd, Flaherty, Eduardo Rodriguez, and James Paxton as our next group of four pitchers, 9.7 down to 9K respectively. Boyd coming back from injury. Paternity. Well, hey, it's injury, but I can't
help you on that one.
I love my kids. They just injure me every day with their attitudes. I have a 9, 6, and 2-year-old. I have a 9 going on about 31, 6 going on 16, and a 2-year-old who thinks she already knows everything about life. Yeah. It's a lot of fun. Not surprisingly, they all think they're always right because their old man always thinks he's right. So it's not really a good dynamic in our house. But nonetheless, a boy coming back from paternity, as pointed out by Josh. So no rust to worry about there. He gets Minnesota, not the best matchup. Flaherty against Colorado, like that on the road, obviously getting out of Coors Field. You have a strikeout guy against a team that, again, road home splits can be a little bit disingenuous when you're trying to filter out the noise, but we all know Coors clearly inflates so many different factors for their hitters. So getting anywhere else is going to be a step down. And Eduardo Rodriguez against San Diego. Now, the San Diego Padres are a team that strikes out. They have righty power. We know that, but they've had some injuries. They have some guys in now in the lineup. Any of these four stand out to you as potential plays or guys that you think might measure out as projected for Friday slate?
On a different day, I think Matt Boyd would look okay at 9,700, but Berrios is right there, $300 above him in the exact same game, and they're getting opposite sides of this for sure. Minnesota, very different level than the Tigers' offense. I would guess probably the entire Minnesota offense is better than, like, the worst Minnesota guy is better than the best Detroit guy at this point.
That's a really good exercise to go through.
Oh God, it's probably way closer than it should be.
I'll take a look while you talk about these. I'm going to pull these two up. Yeah.
Flaherty is going to be in play. Again, it might be a case where Berrios at $600 more is just still more appealing, but Flaherty would probably be that guy. The Red Sox matchup and Rodriguez's matchup with San Diego is the one that scares me just because of how much righty power they have. Not that Erod has been giving up like a ton of power to righties. 158x ISO over the last 2 years. So it's not as if he just gets full on blasted by them, but it's still not the best scenario. Like the Padres are probably one of the worst sort of overall teams that he can face just because they lean so heavy to the right.
I almost made a comment there, but I will leave it for a later date. What's amazing, so I'm looking by WRC plus, right? So
Sure.
trying to sort by that. And what's amazing here is I don't even know how this number exists for him. Matt Boyd has a WRC plus. This can't be. I'm going to have to look at this. Of 176 according to Fangraphs. I know it's 2 plate appearances, but he has that's amazing. But then next up is Castellanos, who's no longer with the team, and then Nico Goodrum is 94, is a WRC plus. That would fit for tied with Jonathan Scope for second worst on the Minnesota Twins. So you nailed it. I mean, right there. A Studio is at a 68 WRC plus currently, but everybody loves him. He's a rotund man who never strikes out. So
exactly,
he gets away with it. But wow, that's amazing. It's the right comparison. I think Berrios, to your point, still top play for me. I don't see Boyd being worth a 300. Again, you are astute with the ownership percentages and making sure that your exposures at least track the projected ownership versus real ownership and those things. So if you start to see some wild ownership swings, I assume that would cause some adjustments for you heading into lock.
Yeah, I would hope it would open up, if it goes the way that I think and Berrios is tops, getting to Lynn should be relatively easy. Dropping to Flaherty should be relatively easy. Right. I would guess that Berrios is going to be your best cash option, just given the matchup and the price and the ownership. I would assume people will be happy to go SP1 there. It does make it a little interesting. I'm curious to see where DeGrom's ownership will end up.
Yep.
Because you're never no matter who he faces, you're never upset to get him. He has the sort of slate breaking stuff that you're looking for in a GPP play. But I mean, this little like upper mid tier is way more loaded than a normal day. There's just too many options. I think he's going to get pinched out. But I also haven't looked at the bottom yet. So
it's a ton of ones or 1As when it comes to the rotation.
Yeah.
Guys who you're comfortable and with their matchups are pretty primed for big spots. I will say Paxton, Ryu, Greinke, I don't really want. I know he's had a good run, the curveball. Have you seen, I think it's Pitching Ninja on Twitter had it, that his fastball was clocked at 87 and his changeup was 88? Only Zach Greinke.
That a bit further.
Only Zach Greinke. It's the grip on the ball, and you see the tail, which is his changeup, and he throws the fastball intentionally the same speed because of the spin rate and because of the way he releases the ball and he tunnels. It works.
Do we have to call that a different pitch then?
I mean, it feels like it's actually more of a two-seamer that tails away, but the grip is his changeup grip. Like it's really weird, but nonetheless, I don't want to take anyone against the Angels. The offense is too powerful. They don't strike out enough. It seems like a spot where I'll stay away from Greinke. Same for Paxton. I have no desire to play anyone against the Dodgers. No. Thank you.
Although I guess he fits it better than most.
Sure.
Considering they lean so heavily to the left. Yes. There's your chance again.
Yeah, there it is.
Not that I expect to be getting to a bunch of Paxton at 9K with all of the arms that we've already talked about, but I don't know. Actually, I have no concept of how the Dodgers have been against lefties.
I can pull. I have that up.
I'm hustling to it. I'm trying to beat you.
All right. K percentage is probably way down. 21.8% K percentage, 106 WRC plus, and ISO of 202.
Okay, so yeah, it's still bad. Yeah, don't play James Paxton against the Dodgers.
I will say I had a great moment, and I most of the people who listen know which way I lean in that left and right discussion. But I tweeted out something about trolls on Twitter, and some trolls got to it, and one of them ended up replying with, "Is this that huge lib DFS guy?" I was like, well, I guess it's better to be known than not known, and if I'm known for that, sure, why not? So I just wrote back UGE. I was like, huge, man. You got me pegged.
Bad. I've been saying that word like that for 15 years.
Huge?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. There's no H.
You're right. And now I just feel like I can't use it the same way.
Right.
I'm going to take that word back.
You own that word, Josh. You own it. Let's roll on here. It's a huge slate. We got to get to everything. Paddock, Cease, Velasquez, Trevor Richards. No, that's not Trevor Richards, is it? It is, in fact.
It is Trevor Richards.
Trevor Richards for Tampa Bay at 7,400. Plesac, Junis, and Jordan Lyles, who's now with the Milwaukee Brewers, is at 7K. So it's expanding the zone a little bit for us here as we get to the mid-tier. Paddock has the stuff, quote unquote, to go out and strike out anybody. I did make mention these are professional athletes, but they are also human beings. The Red Sox had to play Thursday, get on a plane and fly out to the West Coast and now play Friday night. That's a lot of time, absolutely, but that is a decent trip to make and then have to suit up Friday night. Cease, I honestly, from a fan perspective and from a season-long fantasy perspective, a DFS, I don't know what to make of this guy.
No.
I know there's pedigree. I know there's minor league numbers to point to. I'm a big fan of MILB numbers. I think they give us at least enough to chew on when trying to project these guys out. I don't see it, and I don't see it with this matchup with Texas. I get that it's a decent park. I know Texas strikes out a decent amount, but I can't necessarily go there. Velasquez gets Miami. Do we go to Vince?
That's the one. It has to be, right? In Miami, too, It's really hard to avoid guys like this in Miami. Minus 173 at Pinnacle right now. Run total's 9, so it's nothing crazy. If I'm going to be taking Vince Velasquez, I would love to take him in a ballpark like,
right.
What is it? Is it my, I don't
I
even
think
know.
I think it's Marlins Stadium still.
Crafty. You would think they would sell that for stadium rights.
That's fair. I should double check that, but you're right. That is a very, very astute observation.
I feel like it is Marlins Park, though. It is Marlins Park.
Yeah, it's Marlins Park. That's a very good point. Like, of all the teams in the world to not have, like, Smoothie King or it would be the Marlins. They sell, like, the tag on the back of their cleats to whoever it might be. That's a good
wonder
one.
why they don't have stadium naming rights.
No one wants to pony up the cash.
Yeah, I was trying to think of some really garbage company that would sponsor it, but I don't have anybody, and it's probably not in the best interest to be shouting out
Sal's Auto Body Stadium.
Right. It'd be like one of the billboards that are on the wall in Major League when it's just like nobody's interested.
Yeah, it'd be like Dion's Fireworks Stadium.
Whatever company that Lou Brown was selling tires for.
Exactly right. So good. Such a great movie. I need to watch that again soon. Listen, Velasquez is home run prone. We know that. Like, this is a guy who, when the fastball is up in the zone and it's not up enough, he is going to give up home runs. But to Josh's point, you got to consider park factor here. Some of those fly balls won't leave the stadium in Marlins Park. So you have upside, and the price point's reasonable. He's at 7,800. He's pushing 9K. Then I think you have to reconsider and realize that he is a bit more volatile than you prefer. Over on FanDuel, he's 7,700. I'll check out Yahoo prices momentarily. But that is, he's going to be owned.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
he'll be the most popular pitcher in the mid-tier.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And from a cash game perspective, by all means, you're going to him and you're going for the floor and you're trying to figure out where you're going from there. From a GPP perspective for you, ownership matters. Does the blow-up potential scare you off at all where you may manipulate some? Nope, shaking the head.
No, not at all. 28% K rate against righties over the past 2 seasons, and Miami generally rolls out 7 righties in basically every lineup that they have.
And the lefties like JT Riddle or Curtis Granderson.
It's Diaz and who the hell was it today?
That's right. They brought up
Neil Walker, maybe?
Yes, that's right. He's been batting cleanup for them.
So, yeah, I'm cool with Velasquez in any format.
That's fantastic.
Cue the Marlins bludgeoning of Vince Velasquez tomorrow now.
Am
I supposed to say today? Am I supposed to make this sound like I'm actually recording it on a Friday? I'm not good at this.
We're good. I think everyone understands. It's the DFS night shift early bird. We can just merge it all together.
Tomorrow, aka today, aka whatever.
Friday. That's in news. You're taught news radio. You're taught to always refer to the actual day. One reason is so people who are listening know what day it is. It's crazy to think that, but to actually remind people what's happening.
Makes sense.
But the other thing is that, so if you do a news story at night, they can still use it in the morning. So if I talk about Friday today, then tomorrow morning they can still use that instead of me saying today. You can't timestamp it that way. You have to throw it away after that. But
we'll cut that out in post.
Yeah. Oh, come on. That's riveting podcasting right there, Josh.
No, I mean, my mistake.
Oh.
No, not the explanation. The explanation's fantastic. I just mean we'll correct my error.
Oh, that's fair.
I'll
make you look good.
What's it called when you like go back into the booth to record audio?
Voiceover?
Yeah. Isn't there like another name for it?
Yeah, you can dub it over.
Yeah, I should do that. Just while I'm saying today or tomorrow, it'll just be like,
just drop it in every time. You
Friday.
Just say it once. Exactly. Just say it once in a one monotone way. Drop it everywhere. Yeah. We call it franken cutting when it comes to audio editing.
We'll do that.
Let's see what else we got. Plesac against Kansas City. This is an offense we've targeted a bit. They've had some injuries. They have a strikeout rate in the low 20s. Is that where the Royals are at? No, actually, low 20s, 20.6. Yeah. So not the best matchup from that perspective, but they don't hit for a ton of power. Anything here from anybody else beyond Velasquez, or is this a situation for you? Prices and cash isn't differentiated enough that you're going to get to Velasquez 9 times out of 10.
It's going to be a lot of Velasquez. I might as well just get out in front of the fact that I pretty much get Jacob Junis every week. I don't know how to really stop it. I'm hoping that just doesn't happen. I assume I'll get like 5%, and then, I'll assume I'll want to get 5%. What that number actually ends up being will depend on the ownership. I just hope that it's 0. Now it's like Trevor Richards, I guess, has to be talked about a little bit because it's Baltimore, but Even Baltimore's not. It's not like facing Miami in Miami. The game's in Baltimore, so you're getting the Orioles part. At this point, I can call it Camden Yards. That one makes sense. Like Camden Yards is going to be playing up to hitting big time, so it's not as if Trevor Richards is pitching in some sort of safe ballpark. He'll be very likely to pick up a win, but other than that, I think Velasquez just pretty clearly stands out in this 7K tier.
It is funny that it's Orioles Park at Camden Yards.
Yeah.
So that's good. It's synergy. It all comes together to make a lot of sense. Because it's also technically, I think, Ravens Stadium at Camden Yards, but they never really call it that. Like it's in the same structure basically, and so I think city-wise, it's referred to as the entire thing is Camden Yards, entire area. But if someone's from Baltimore, Adam, I'll ask Adam, and he'll tell me to F off and that he's not going to answer.
Right.
Dan, I don't know. I root for the Redskins. So I just
hate the Ravens.
So let's roll on. Now we get into the fun part where we get to talk about some of the crappier pitchers in Major League Baseball in non-prime spots. We do have Hector Noesi in Marlins Park, and I simply say because he is pitching in Miami, has to be recognized as a potential ownership thing. He is not a very good pitcher, has never really been a good pitcher. He's been around for ages now. Was with the Yankees, I feel like 15 years ago. Maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, but probably 10.
Feels like it.
You have DeSclafani. Keller, we've talked about in the past. He gets a matchup with the Cincinnati Reds. He has a stellar ERA of 8.86, a nice whip of 202. Good job, good effort from Mr. Kelly. On the other side, though, of the Kelly tandem, Merrill Kelly is going into Milwaukee. Can't see that being an upside play for him. He does have some strikeout potential. Any of these names on all the way down through to Lambert. We have Suarez against Houston, which is going to be a massacre. Ty Block, still one of the greatest names in baseball. I got nothing down here. I don't see anybody. I guess we have to talk about Trent Thornton. I guess Trent Thornton has to at least be discussed at this point.
So, I mean, DeSclafani, if we're circling a little bit further back, is fully dependent on whatever that lineup looks like. Just count up the amount of right-handed hitters in the lineup. If that's a high number, then you like DeSclafani. If it's a low number, then you don't. You don't need to really pay attention to that game whatsoever until that Pittsburgh lineup comes out. He is just such a tale of two different guys against lefties and righties that it really doesn't matter any sort of prep work you do before it. The lineup will tell the whole story.
And they have enough lefty. I mean, they have enough guys they can run out there if they really choose to. So
strikes me as a really bad spot for DeSclafani. More than likely. Thornton would be the guy that I think you have to look at. Seattle just strikes out so much. Thornton should be able to get some Ks here. I don't ever trust this guy. I feel like I can't get him right.
But the spin rate,
ever.
Josh, the spin rate on the breaking ball, it's
Yeah.
elite.
It apparently. That doesn't seem to be paying off for me at all. Apparently, the spin on days where I don't have him and ignores all sorts of spinning pitches when I do. That said, 6,200 here against Seattle. I'm going to have him. He gets touched up against lefties. He's tolerable against righties. For what speaking of that spin rate, you would expect him to have a higher strikeout rate, but it's like sort of league average, balanced on both sides. He's probably the guy that stands out most. It's really hard to talk me into Suarez against Houston.
Yeah, no way.
I don't. Do we really want Ty Block against Tampa in Baltimore? No. Hector, no. I mean, Noesi, because it's in Miami, it has to be at least thought about. He's not fully off the board. But the good part about this slate is because of where Berrios is priced, because of even Lance Lynn to a degree, or Flaherty, we don't have that 12K pitcher like we've had these past 2 days with Cole and Verlander, where we have to dumpster dive as much as normal.
Yep. There is some options to move around a bit. I'm with you. Suarez against the Astros. Now, could this be a Verlander result where he goes out and shuts down? Sure. Crazy things happen in baseball. And I think people who listen to us and especially subscribe to Osmo need to realize and at least understand the variance of this sport, that projecting 4 at-bats for a batter and projecting 7 innings for a pitcher on a single day is near black magic, is near craziness when it really comes down to it. So some days you throw your hands up and say, hey, it happened, I need to move on to the next. But I would think Houston has a huge, huge day here against Suarez. Justice Sheffield, somebody long-term that I like as a major league pitcher. He was a Yankee prospect. He was part of the James Paxton deal. He gets a matchup with the Toronto Blue Jays. Now, this is a Blue Jays team that in the past, and even looking at their active roster, has struck out a decent amount against both sides of the plate, and they're at 23.7% against lefties. But this is a team now, talking about active roster, that has Biggio, Bichette, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., and they're hitting. And are they all hitting home runs? No, but the top of that lineup is fun to watch, is one that's dangerous. So this is more anecdotal. This is we talked at the top about sample size and all those things, but those are 3 hitters who you can look at their minor league numbers and look at how crazy good. Obviously, everyone's heard of Guerrero, but Bichette was great in AAA and AA. Same for Biggio. This is going to be a dangerous team against lefties, especially over the next few years for sure.
With all of these guys on the Jays that are like sons and stuff of former players, do you think Justice Sheffield is going to be like super jealous that he's got the last name but not any tie? It's got to be so sad to go to Toronto and be like, oh, you guys all had I've got the name. I don't. That Gary guy is good.
He hits the ball really hard.
I guess he's probably in play a little bit here at 5,700.
I think he's cheap enough.
He's fully stretched out. Like it's not like he was in the bullpen or something. He goes deep in AA games. Have you looked at any of his game logs?
Yeah.
A lot of 7s and 8s, which is not typically something you see.
He's the kind of guy that, again, projecting rookie pitchers, I think, is tough. It's a really tough thing to do depending on what minor league. And you, again, talking about slide chat, you're right. There are translations now. We know PCL versus the Mexican League versus the Gulf Coast, and how to sort of translate some of these stats based on the parks and all. But that transition, the getting acclimated, getting used to a new catcher, pitching coach, all of those things, I think Justice Sheffield is going to be a very, very good long-term pitcher in Major League Baseball. I just don't know if he's quite there yet to have 7 2/3 outings. Of all the teams, you want to talk anecdotal, well, youngsters like to chase. Remember that, young players, they like to chase the ball. I think if I'm MMEing, which I don't do, I would not be afraid of having Sheffield in the mix. I would not be afraid of getting at least some exposure to him and having the upside of the strikeouts that they will provide in Toronto.
I think it's a very reasonable stance. It's basically a coin flip game right now. Toronto minus 114. That is, negligible at best. Only a 9.5 total too. So it's not as if this is 11 and we're dealing with, monster run totals on either side. I think both he and Thornton are in play just because of the hitting on the opposite side.
Yep. And I think that's what the analysis comes down to. Let me remind you all about that Yahoo offering I was talking about before. The NFL $1 Million Baller, $1 million guaranteed, $100K to first, $50K to second, flat payout, no management fee, 10 entry max, $25 to enter, 25% of the field is paid out, at least double their entry fee. There's also a $100K guaranteed, 20K to first, 10 entry max. It is $10 to enter. There is a 12% management fee on that. And then there's the NFL Yahoo Cup, which is a fun contest. It's sort of a survivor sort of week over week contest where you're playing and there are payouts per week and an overall payout for the season. So you'll want to check that out over on Yahoo DFS. Football is coming. Whether we like it or not, it will be here. It will be in our face, and we'll all be inundated with football content, just like we have over at Awesemo.com. We have team previews. We have position previews. Alex released his season-long projections.
Yeah.
If you want to be a Premium Plus member, Awesemo Plus member, use the promo code EarlyBird. Hell, use any of the promo codes that we give out. Gets you 50% off and gets you in for, I don't get any kickback on the Early Bird one. So I'm going to say use whatever you got. But use Early Bird, one word, gets you in for 50% off your first month. And then you're a member. And you come join me and Josh in Slack chat, and you get to discuss some great things each and every day. Let's talk some offenses, and then we will say so long for the Early Bird.
Sure.
There are multiple ways to go, it feels like here. Wondering off the first glance, first time we're looking at this slate as we walk through, I have a feeling I know some of the names that will stand out, but which teams for you first off here stand out as potential plays as stacks or at least offenses that you want to get pieces of on Friday night?
I think I see two that stand out immediately to me. That would be the Rays, again, similar to today.
Yep.
In Baltimore, tie block just should be a decent spot. It would surprise me if they don't have one of the higher implied run totals.
I don't see a line on them right now, but yeah.
So from what I'm looking at one of the betting sites, Tampa Bay still listing their starter as undecided, even though DraftKings had Trevor Richards in there. So I assume they'll be pretty sizable favorites one way or the other. Even if they go to like a bullpen game or something like that, I don't think it's going to matter all that much. So Tampa, going to have my eye on them for sure. And then the Brewers against Merrill Kelly at home. There's just so much lefty power in that lineup, and Merrill Kelly gets bombed.
Yeah, I think that's more than reasonable. I will say the Houston Astros, I think, are going to be pretty popular here against Suarez in Houston. Yeah. And then mid-tier wise, trying to find that sort of needle in the haystack. Obviously, Alex and the website have the stack projection and the ownership projection, the value of it all. So if you are a member, check that out. That's behind the paywall. So you'll want to be a member to see it. But anybody in this mid-tier you feel like you want to stack, could it be a San Diego stack against Rodriguez that could do some damage here at a lower ownership?
I can tell you that I will probably have a little bit of Rangers.
Okay.
They have been, their power tends to lean a little bit more to the left, which will, help them out a little bit against Cease. Getting a righty-lefty matchup where that righty on the hill is just trying to throw straight gas straight past you. If that goes wrong, not going to have a problem putting a ball out in Chicago. So Texas would be a team that I'm looking at. You mentioned Houston before. I don't get the sense that they're going to be that owned. They are just so expensive.
Sure. Absolutely.
They were basically unable, the super low ownership today. From their pricing tomorrow, Alvarez 57, Bregman 55, Altuve 53, Springer 53, Brantley 52, Gurriel 52, Correa 51. They're just really hard to get to. Not to say that they're not a great stack, because I bet in the top stack tool, they're one of the top teams in terms of likelihood of being the top stack. But to be able to actually put them in a lineup is really difficult. I had to take quite a few concessions on Thursday with my Astros stacks. A lot of Ariel Jurado, which didn't go well. I'm trying to speak in past and present at the same time right now, but I see him getting bombed, and it sucks.
Yeah, I have one Jurado lineup, which
I have him in 30% of my lineups.
Oh, that's a significant amount of of that pitcher. I went. I went for some Nats, which I heard Adam talking about on the deeper dive about how they're going to be somewhat unknown because of their price points, similar to what you're saying here about the Astros. So tinker, build the lineups. If you're a hand lineup builder, build the lineups early with what you think the projected lineups are, just to see what you have, just to see where you can get to and what you can do. If you're MMEing, start doing some crunches early again to start seeing what your exposures are. I am not saying to set your lineups at 2:00. I'm not saying to set it and forget it. I'm saying that start getting an idea of it. If you're on your lunch break, run something. If you're driving home, or on a bus, I should say, you're not driving home. If you're on a bus, take the time to go through it so you're not scrambling at lock to try to piece something together. Use the lineup builder too. That builds in Alex's grades, and it also brings in all the lineups, and it gives you everything you need there and give you an idea of where you can get to, and then grades out your lineup and should give you a better idea of how it might turn out. I want to hit quickly here on Yahoo, sponsoring, obviously, this podcast. You have Lynn, DeGrom, Greinke. Berrios is $47. Flaherty, $42. Paddock is $42. Velasquez, $36. Let's see. Sheffield is $28. Trent Thornton, $27. So similar pricing, not obviously exactly the same as DK or FanDuel will give us because of the way they structure everything. But is there any way you approach Yahoo differently if you're playing over there with pitchers and with roster construction that you might want to impart on the listeners here before we go?
Yeah, a little bit, actually. More so than anything else, because the contest sizes are smaller, because you're only playing a 10 max, you don't have to dig in the dumpster as much as you have to do in a contest on DraftKings or FanDuel where there's 55,000 entries. Like you don't have to find yourself being like, okay, well, I think I might need to get a Peter Lambert share here today. It's just not a thing. So just look, I was logging in right there. I had to get the alert on my phone to be like, are you trying to log in to Yahoo? It's like, yes, I am. Okay.
Stop judging me.
I go there every day. You don't know by now. It's the same. I sit in the same seat constantly. It's going to be Berrios again here at 47. DeGrom being cheaper than Lance Lynn is kind of interesting. I feel like it's correct too, in just for the matchups. So DeGrom is certainly more in play here than I think he will be on DK and FanDuel. Jack Flaherty for 42 looks pretty good. Velasquez at 36 is kind of priced up for the spot. Same price as James Paxton.
Right.
Matt Boyd, 33. Oh, man. I don't know if Adam's playing on Yahoo tomorrow, but he's probably salivating if he is. He's going to dream about a $33 Matt Boyd.
That could be fun. Sheffield, 28. So we talked about him a bit. Yeah. Cheap enough. 27 for Thornton seems cheap enough as well. You do have Noesi and Block as your two min price pitchers at $25 a piece. Can't see either of them having decent days here. But and I think that's great logic and strategy point for Yahoo of smaller tournament sizes, less entries. The thing I used to talk about a lot on Fantasy Draft was that you can't just port over your DraftKings lineup. I know pricing is very similar because things are slightly different. You can't just plug and play because the roster construction is different. Yeah. The same here with Yahoo. You have to do the research for Yahoo, use projections, whatever you need to do, but don't just go in clicking the same names that you did on DK or FanDuel because you're going to lose. It's more often than not.
Yeah, so, you have to pay attention to people. I think people forget it a lot. More so than anything else, the price is what matters.
Right.
Because if you wake up tomorrow and Mike Trout is $2,000 on DraftKings, it doesn't really matter who's pitching. No part of the game matters. If he's playing, you have to play a stupid amount of Mike Trout. It's a free square. Similarly, if he's priced at $7,000 tomorrow, you shouldn't roster Mike Trout at all. Every single bit of this price matters. And in this case, man, I would honestly think about running out a Boyd-Berrios combo, stacking the pitching in that game. Even though Minnesota's a really tough spot for Boyd, for $33, he's priced like he's not Matt Boyd. Now, he hasn't been great lately. Speaking of small sample sizes and stuff, I'm a little worried about whatever's going on.
Are you talking about his paternity? Or
No, he had a couple of rough starts. I'm sure he's a little tired at this point too. Maybe that was part of the cause. He had other stuff on his mind,
anxiety,
and he pitches for the Tigers, so I can't imagine he cares a single bit about any start he's in. I mean, there's not. He probably thought that he was going to be living in Houston for the last 2 months.
So true.
Well, he's just like, man, Zach Greinke, that asshole.
Like, that's got to be such a weird world. A lot of these guys talk, they text and Twitter, Instagram, whatever it might be. But to be someone like Boyd, who's been heavily rumored to go somewhere, then probably be on Twitter. Well, first of all, have the deadline pass really and not be traded. And then as the final minutes are passing and it's like 4:05 and Ken Rosenthal is talking about Greinke to Houston, what the hell just happened? It's
like I still have to live in Detroit.
Exactly.
Sorry, Detroit.
Yeah, sorry, Detroit. We love you.
You guys know.
You're aware. Let's be honest. But as always, you find Josh over there on awesemo.com, in Slack, on all the shows. So you get the MLB strategy show. Josh is there a majority of the time. You get the deeper dive. Typically, Adam and Lofty. I believe Lofty's back for the show. Yes.
Tomorrow?
No. Yes.
Today? Shit. Friday? We'll get there. I got to get more reps on that one. No, he is not back tomorrow. It'll be Adam and I tomorrow on Deeper Dive.
So you get Adam and Josh for the Deeper Dive. Live Before Lock comes after that. That is all free over there on YouTube. Like, subscribe, hit that little alarm bell there. So every time we go live, you get notifications of that. Leave comments. We like them. We read them. I read them all, even though you're told not to read the comments. I enjoy reading the comments. I find them funny at this stage in my life. 10 years ago, probably would have gotten pissed off about a bunch of them. But
they would have stung me way more 10 years ago than they
dude,
now I generally enjoy just about everyone.
College radio.
Suck are the ones that are rooted in truth.
That's true. You're like, you sort of do that, the Alonzo Mourning head nod. We're like, yeah, that's fair. In college, it was late 90s, early 2000s for me. So right when the internet boom of message boards really started, and I was working at the student radio station, there was a thread about my play calling. And I knew not to click on it, right? Like I knew like, don't click on it. First 3 or 4 compliments, all right, great. And then slowly it just evolves to the point where I had a login. Like I was on there before I started doing radio. I just went nuts on it. I was like, you mother.
It's different though, because like those people, generally speaking, at that point in time in the internet, like you were mostly getting like real opinions.
Right.
Trolling. It was different. Like it wasn't broken. It wasn't broken speech as bad. It was just negative thoughts.
Right.
For the most part. I mean, it was still trolly, but now it's just you don't know what you're gonna get.
Nope.
There are no. It's gonna be really crazy when like everything becomes public eventually because
it's happening.
And people say a bunch of real bad stuff on the internet.
Yep.
Always.
One of my favorite things that I know will happen eventually is that Facebook somehow or another is going to start posting who's looking at your profile, and so every like ex stalker out there is going to be like completely
going to put these people out of business.
Exactly right. All right. You find Josh on Twitter at Josh Engelman. Of course, you find me at Dan Trafford. It's awesemo_com for the main site. You have Awesemo MLB, NFL. Follow those as well. They have giveaways. So you'll want to check them out. There are giveaways for free subscriptions and so much more. I said it already. Alex has NFL projections posted. As you get into your drafts, you'll want to use those. And we'll have so much NFL DFS content for you once the season rolls out. We already do when it comes to preseason. So it's going to roll over. And then NBA is not far behind. It just
can't wait.
I'm right there with you. I like NFL. I'll play NFL. I enjoy it. I enjoy doing content for it. The NBA is fun. Like the NBA DFS product for me is my favorite DFS. And I'm a baseball. Like baseball is my number one sport. Like that's what I love the most. But NBA DFS is just fun to play. And so I'm really looking forward to that. That's going to do it. You find Emac and Adam Saturday morning. You get me and Chris Rendon on Monday morning right here on the DFS Early Bird presented by Awesemo.com.